He stood frozen. The metal gleamed under the harsh lights, and for once the room was utterly silent. I could see it, the precise second my father realized what the words meant. Colonel Aaron Callahan, Commanding Officer, Unit 77. The general's voice echoed through the hall, deliberate and formal, as if each syllable carried a classified weight. He spoke of leadership, of a mission known only by its codename, Operation Black Fog, of 48 lives saved because of her command decisions. His eyes flicked to me when he said her. My father didn't blink. The man beside him, Commander Briggs, his old Navy SEAL buddy, rose sharply, spine straight, hand to his brow in a perfect salute. "Colonel," he whispered, barely audible. I could see my father's lips part as he processed the impossible truth. The daughter he'd always called his secretary now commanded legends. I didn't move. I'd spent a lifetime learning stillness, the kind that hides storms. I let him sit in that silence, that realization. The rank he had worshipped all his life now belonged to the daughter he'd dismissed. To understand how it came to this, how a single joke about my job led to this reckoning in front of the entire chain of command. You have to understand the two lives I was living. It started months earlier, on a humid Saturday afternoon. My father, Robert Callahan, a retired Navy captain who still polished his medals once a month, was hosting one of his endless backyard barbecues. His old shipmates filled the yard. Thick laughter, beer bottles, the smell of smoke and nostalgia. I had flown in from D.C., technically on leave, though leave never really applied to my line of work. My job didn't pause. It simply went quiet. When I arrived, he barely looked up. "There she is," he said, clapping his hands together. "Our little secretary's back from the big city. Keeps the coffee hot for the big shots, don't you, Aaron?" The men chuckled. I smiled. That brittle, rehearsed kind of smile you use when you've heard the same line 100 times and it still stings just as much. I wanted to correct him, to tell them that I wasn't a secretary, that my desk was a command center buried 3 stories underground, and that the big shots he imagined were the ones who signed off on missions based on my directives. But classified meant classified. So instead, I just said something like that and reached for a glass of water. That's when I noticed one of the men staring at my wrist. Commander Briggs, broad, weathered, sharp eyes that had clearly seen more than they said. His gaze lingered on the small tattoo barely visible under my sleeve. Unit 77. His expression changed, a flicker of recognition and disbelief crossing his face. "That's not just decorative, is it?" he said quietly. Before I could answer, my father cut in with a laugh. "Please," he scoffed. "She probably got that at a souvenir shop. My girl's allergic to real combat." The group erupted again. Something inside me, something I'd trained for years to keep buried, shifted. That familiar ache of dismissal settled in, heavier this time. I had spent years living 2 lives. One where every word was measured, every command mattered, and another where none of it did. Briggs didn't laugh. His eyes flicked between me and my father, realization dawning. He opened his mouth but thought better of it. I set my glass down carefully. "Excuse me, gentlemen," I said. My voice was steady, colder than I intended. As I walked away, the laughter faltered. I didn't need to look back to know Briggs was still watching me. He'd seen something my father never did. He'd recognized the mark not as a souvenir, but as a seal, one only worn by those who commanded silence, secrecy, and lives. He thought it was just another joke. He didn't realize he'd just mocked the woman his own friend reported mission intel to. To understand why that mattered, you need to see what I really do when I'm not their secretary. My father, Robert Callahan, was the kind of man who filled every room he entered. Retired Navy commander, loud laugh, louder opinions. He had a way of turning everything into a competition, even love. My mother, Elaine, his ever-agreeable audience, learned to smooth the edges of his pride by echoing it. To them, strength meant noise, medals, combat stories. And me? I was the quiet one with a safe little job behind a desk in D.C. The paper pusher. The one who, according to him, wouldn't last a week in the field. At dinners, the conversation always circled back to his service days. I'd sit there, smile fixed in place, listening as he retold the same stories of bravery and sacrifice. Every time I tried to contribute, he'd cut me off with a chuckle. Paper pushers don't win wars, sweetheart. My mother would nod gently, adding, "He's just teasing, Aaron. You know how proud he is." But pride, I realized, wasn't something they offered. It was something I had to earn on their terms. I'd look down at my plate, thinking of the irony, how I spent my days managing operations that could cripple nations, yet couldn't. Convince my own parents I was capable of anything more than stapling reports. I tried once to explain, not everything, just a piece. I told them I worked with satellite intel, with data that moved faster than bullets. My father snorted into his drink. "So, tech support for the military?" The table laughed. And I laughed too, because it was easier than trying to explain what classified really meant. Easier than telling them the truth, that I couldn't speak of my work not because it was dull, but because it was deadly. Behind those restrictions, though, was my world. The one that didn't exist in their eyes but ran on my commands. A room with no windows, only light from a dozen glowing screens. My headset pressing tight against my ears as the voices of my team filled the channel. Calm, focused, my voice steady as I said, "Execute Alpha Protocol Override. Confirm target evacuation route. Priority 1. Encrypt all under black fog." Seconds mattered. Lives hung on timing. And when the final confirmation came through, when I heard target secured, mission complete, I didn't cheer. I just exhaled quietly, pen tapping against the edge of the console. That's what leadership felt like in my world. Not applause, not medals, just silence, relief, and the knowledge that 48 people would live another day because I'd made the right call. The intercom clicked. "Colonel Callahan, the secretary wants your debrief." It still startled me sometimes, how different my name sounded here. Colonel. To my team, it meant authority. To my parents, it meant nothing at all. After the mission, General Hale stopped by my workstation. Grizzled, gray-haired, eyes sharp but kind. "They'll never know the lives you save," he said, resting a hand on my shoulder. "But I will. You've earned the silence." I nodded, though part of me wished, just once, that silence wasn't the price of being exceptional. That night, I sat at my parents' dinner table again, the smell of overcooked steak filling the room. My father was mid-laugh, telling his friends how the Pentagon keeps her, chained to a desk, probably afraid she'll faint near real soldiers. More laughter followed. I forced a smile, the kind that didn't quite reach my eyes. Every insult layered itself onto the ones before it. The forgotten birthdays, the dismissive nods, the patronizing pats on the shoulder. It all blurred into one steady hum of disbelief. I thought to myself, it's one thing to be unseen. It's another to be erased. My clearance silenced me. But that silence became my armor. They'd never know the weight of the missions I carried, the things I'd seen, the orders I'd given. And maybe that was for the best. My work didn't need their validation. It needed my focus. Still, the ache never completely went away. Watching my father slap his friend on the back, laughing under the glow of backyard lights, I felt the divide more clearly than ever. Two worlds, one loud and proud, one quiet and indispensable. On one side, a man who built his identity on past glory. On the other, his daughter, commanding a war in shadows. For years, I tried to earn respect in their language. stories, medals, bravado, but they only respected one thing: command. So, I decided to speak to them in the only language they understood: chain of command. I didn't slam a door. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even let them see the anger. I'd learned long ago that fury was noise, and noise was their language, not mine. After the barbecue, after my father's laughter still rang in my ears, I sat in my apartment and stared at the tattoo on my wrist, Unit 77. The thing he mocked, the thing that defined my entire existence. I traced the ink with my thumb and made a decision. Not to confront, but to correct. Quietly, permanently. The next morning, I called General Hale, my commanding officer, and the only person who'd ever seen through my composure. "Sir," I said, "I need a favor." There was a long pause, then that gravelly voice of his replied, "You're not the kind to ask for favors, Colonel. What's this about?" I told him about the upcoming Command Excellence Recognition Ceremony at Fort Meade, about how my father and his old unit were part of the invited veterans list. Hale exhaled slowly. "Are you sure you want him there?" he asked. I smiled faintly, even though he couldn't see it. "I want him to see what command actually looks like." Once the call ended, I opened my encrypted terminal and began the process. It wasn't vengeance, it was logistics. Precision. I entered the guest names one by one. Commander Thomas Briggs, Ret. Captain Robert Callahan, Ret. My fingers moved with purpose, each keystroke a statement. Their attendance would be listed under Honored Veterans of Operation Iron Tide, a harmless category, officially speaking. But in truth, it was a front-row invitation to the truth. I reached out to Hale again, requesting that my file, heavily redacted since my early missions, be cleared for partial declassification. "You're authorizing this?" he asked, incredulous. "Public disclosure?" I nodded. "Just enough for the record to finally reflect reality. I'm not asking for special treatment, sir, just accuracy." When the final confirmation came through, I sat back and let the silence fill the room. I thought about every dinner table where I'd bitten my tongue, every smirk I'd let pass, every moment I'd been told to lighten up. I wasn't erasing those memories. I was rewriting their context. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. That night, the first responses arrived. My father's name blinked on the RSVP list, signed with smug pride. His message: wouldn't miss it for the world. Maybe they'll finally recognize real service. Briggs responded minutes later. A single line: "See you there." I read their words and felt the smallest flicker of satisfaction. They had no idea what they'd agreed to. They thought they were being honored for their legacy. They didn't realize they were attending mine. The auditorium at Fort Meade buzzed with quiet authority, the kind of silence that vibrated beneath the surface, filled with medals, ranks, and unspoken rules. The banners read Unit 77, Command Excellence Recognition, but my father thought this was just another reunion. He sat in the front row. His old Navy buddies gathered around him like ghosts of a war long over. His back was straight, his chest puffed. I could almost hear the story he was already rehearsing in his head. How his service inspired this ceremony. How his generation set the standard. He had no idea. General Hale took the podium, his voice steady, his presence commanding. "Today, we honor leaders whose judgment, precision, and courage safeguarded our nation's security," he began. My father nodded approvingly, completely unaware of the storm gathering behind those words. I stood quietly at the back of the room, the weight of my uniform pressing against me like truth waiting to be released. Hale opened a redacted folder. "Our next citation," he said, "is for an officer whose actions under Operation Black Fog prevented catastrophic losses. Under her direct leadership, 48 soldiers survived an ambush that should have been fatal." The crowd stilled. My father leaned forward slightly. Then Hale spoke my name. Colonel Aaron Callahan, commanding officer, Unit 77. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then from the front row I saw it. Briggs. The old Navy SEAL who'd been at that barbecue months ago. His eyes widened as he shot to his feet, his body snapping into a salute before the words even fully sank in. The ripple of realization moved like shock through the room. My father turned toward him, confusion flashing across his face. "Colonel?" he muttered, as if the word itself couldn't belong to me. Hale continued, voice measured, unwavering. Under Colonel Callahan's coordination, the Black Fog convoy was rerouted, rearmed, and reinforced within a 9-minute window, saving lives across 3 branches of service. Her command decisions have since been studied as standard protocol for rapid response leadership. I rose from the back row, every step deliberate. The sound of my heels on the polished floor was the only thing anyone could hear. My father's head turned, and when his eyes landed on me, his daughter, in full dress uniform, ribbons gleaming beneath the lights, his expression cracked, his lips parted, but no words came. Hale stepped aside as I reached the podium. "Admiral Callahan, ma'am. Respect." The room collectively inhaled. It was a Navy courtesy title, used for cross-branch coordination, but in this context, it was also an earthquake. My father's old world and mine had just collided in one line of military decorum. Briggs saluted again, this time with unmistakable pride. The others followed suit. Officers, dignitaries, soldiers, every single one of them rose to their feet. The applause began softly, then thundered like an avalanche through the hall. I kept my gaze fixed ahead, refusing to look down. Until I did. And there he was. My father, his face pale, eyes wide, every ounce of certainty stripped away. His old instincts took over before his pride could catch up. He rose, shoulders back, and saluted me. The salute of a man who just realized his entire definition of legacy had changed hands. For a long moment we stayed like that, his hand trembling slightly, mine steady and unwavering. I thought about all the years he'd spent telling me to respect rank, to understand hierarchy, to earn my place. And I realized that this was it. This was the lesson turned inside out. He'd spent a lifetime demanding respect, never realizing he'd been looking up the chain of command all along. Hale concluded the ceremony with precision. "Her leadership directly saved the lives of personnel once under your command, Captain Callahan," he said, looking directly at my father. "Today you stand in the presence of her legacy." The room went still again. No applause this time, just reverence. My father's jaw clenched, but his eyes, those proud, unyielding eyes, finally softened. He lowered his hand slowly, as if the act itself cost him something. I returned the salute one final time, cold but dignified, and turned away. The applause returned, and I walked forward, each step heavy with everything he'd never said. He'd spent his life teaching me to respect rank. It only took 6 words for him to learn who outranked who. The ceremony ended with the kind of applause that filled the air long after the sound faded. Officers came forward one by one, their handshakes firm, their words quiet but sincere. "Ma'am, honored to serve with you. Thank you for what you did." I smiled, nodding, answering each with the same steady composure I'd carried through every mission. But inside, something was shifting. For once, I wasn't standing in the shadow of someone else's story. This moment was mine, earned, not given. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my parents. My mother's hand rested lightly on my father's arm as they moved toward the exit. They didn't look back. No grand scene, no apology, no confrontation, just silence. The same silence that had defined so much of our relationship. Strangely, I didn't resent it. Some people can't face the truth, Not when it rewrites everything they believed about who's in charge. Briggs approached before leaving. He stood straighter than I'd ever seen him, the weight of respect in every gesture. "We're lucky you're on our side, ma'am," he said softly. His salute was crisp, sincere, and when he walked away, I realized something simple and profound. I didn't need my father's recognition anymore. I already had the respect of the kind of men he'd always wanted to be. 1 year later, the world looked different. My new office was glass and steel, overlooking a command center alive with energy. Rows of glowing screens reflected off polished floors, voices moving in perfect coordination. My nameplate read, Director, Strategic Operations Division. I'd traded battlefield silence for leadership clarity. The weight of command hadn't lessened. It had deepened, matured, evolved into purpose. I stood at the head of the briefing table, my team waiting for direction. "Let's begin," I said, and they did. No hesitation, no questions about authority. Every order flowed cleanly through the chain of command because they trusted me, not my rank, not my reputation, but me. That was the difference. When the meeting ended, I returned to my desk. A single new email notification glowed on the corner of my screen. The sender's name made me pause. Robert Callahan. Subject line, "Proud of you, kid." I read it once, twice. It was short, polite, almost awkward in tone, as if he didn't quite know how to speak to me now. I smiled faintly. Once, he'd introduced me to his friends as his secretary. Now he called me his kid. Progress, maybe, but I didn't need the validation anymore. Because the truth is, legacy isn't something you inherit. It's something you build, one decision at a time. I thought back to the nights in the operations room, to the sound of my team breathing through the comms, waiting for my signal. They'd mocked my silence once. But silence was never weakness. It was discipline, precision, command. It was the quiet strength that had always been mine, even when no one saw it. Out the window I could see the base alive with motion, vehicles rolling, units moving, operations in full swing. The hum of purpose filled the air, steady and sure. I watched it all with the calm of someone who no longer needed to prove anything. I'd learned that respect isn't demanded. It's earned, and once earned, it can't be taken away. My father believed legacy was about medals and stories. I learned a true legacy is about the people who salute you, not because they have to, but because they choose to. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, tell your story below.